Hello, mic test. Can you hear me? Yes, that's great. I hope you had a good lunch, everyone. Yes. Thank you so much for attending my session today. I hope that you're energized and ready to listen to my cloud migration story. And thank you so much for being here. Today I'm planning to share with you about the important things that you need to consider when you're migrating your old .NET legacy applications to the cloud. And before I start, let me share about myself. So my name is Jonah Andersson. I work as an IT consultant at Forefront Consulting, which is actually here in Sweden. So this means I can also speak Swedish, but I'm speaking English today. So I work as an IT consultant, working in different roles. You know, if you're a consultant, you work with different stuff. I work with cloud development in .NET and also in Azure. And I also am a DevOps engineering lead in my work. And aside from what I do daily in my job, I also honored and humbled to be a Microsoft MVP for Azure, sharing knowledge about Azure technology, and also as a certified trainer and a leader of Azure User Group Sweden. So before I start showing you the lessons that I learned in this migration, who among you here have been in a cloud migration journey? Oh, some of you. Is it Azure or AWS? Azure. Okay, great. That's great. That means I'm not alone. So I was actually, I've been in a cloud migration journey myself, and I was like a superwoman who had this mission to move old .NET legacy applications to the cloud. And that was about 7 years ago when I was still beginning my IT consulting job here in Sweden. And the mission that we have was great, and I was like this long-necked giraffe who had this great passion and ambition and also inspiration to help my organization and company to really look above and beyond the clouds. So the mission that I had then was to migrate a monolithic architecture which was hosted on-premise, and we want to move it to Microsoft Azure, which is one of our favorite clouds, of course. And it was an interesting project because that application was actually special and complex. First, the system itself is complex because it's used for calculations of sustainability calculations here in Sweden. It's that are used by commune here in Sweden. But to make the long story short, the system had its challenges. It was coded by like 30 different .NET developers. It was in ASP.NET 4.7, the entire code stack. And then our servers were also dinosaurs. So it was like we have our databases in Windows 2008 R2 server. We had our like dev staging environments. And then the reporting services was on SQL reporting services. That was also an old version of SQL Server. And then the challenge that we had there as well in that monolithic architecture is that it wasn't the modern DevOps that we have today, like the CI/CD that we just push the code and then it goes delivered to Azure. This one is really dinosaur at really old style because I worked as a developer, so I add features in .NET, and I have to do manual stuff. I have to publish the code, save the DLL files, log into the Windows server, and then publish it, test it, and collaborate with the team. So my point why I'm sharing the manual process and the complications that we have, we want to break that problem. So we want to move to the cloud. So we want to use Power BI, SQL Server, and Azure, of course, to modernize it. And I think some of you have seen this, especially those of you that have worked with cloud migration with Azure. So there are different .NET like application maturity models that you can do. For example, you can migrate and rehost, you can modernize, you can use containers, you can use microservices. And it actually, every cloud migration project actually depends on your goal and the current status of your .NET applications that are still on premises. So my title at that time as an IT consultant was actually to develop. I was a .NET developer, but because that project was still starting and nobody else could do Azure except me, so I had a super IT consultant role that aside from developing code in .NET applications, I also had to help the project in architecting the solutions. What is the best Azure service for this old technology, this and that. So it was tough. Yeah, nobody can be the jack of all trades or Jane of all trades, but at that time, I didn't have any choice. So it was a big cloud migration project for a small team. And when I say small team, that's me, a project manager who have no idea what Azure is, and then a fellow developer who are there to kind of like help me on the side if I need someone to bullplunk in Swedish. So it was good. I was not completely alone, but the work, I had to do all of them alone. So that reminded me of this picture. Have any of you seen this before, you that worked with .NET or system development? So I did actually, I studied computer science first, and then I also studied .NET Agile System Development in Yrkeshögskolan in Hudiksvall. And one of the things that I like about this picture, which still reminds me every time I talk about project, is that it describes the reality of our IT projects today. So regardless if it's a cloud migration, .NET project, we experience these things, and every individual, every role has something to say. And for me, it's important to just focus on the goal and collaborate. So what did we do during our cloud migration? So first, we did the lift and shift. So since we had the Windows 2008 R2 server, and at that time, about 6 years ago, we had this, we had to set that goal because Windows 2008 R2 that time was it came up with end of support. So which means that if we don't change or upgrade our servers, we won't be getting any support, security updates and stuff. So we thought maybe we should do the easiest one because I'm the only one doing it. We don't have so much developers that could assist with the migration project. So we did the lift and shift options with thinking about Azure VMs or infrastructure as a service. It could have worked, but it didn't actually because we thought that it was too expensive and it was too complex as well. And the one that pays the bill, they thought that it was maybe not the right option for us. So we did the next step. We did the refactoring, which means that we also tried to change the version of our .NET from 4.6 or 7, so a higher version, 4.8. And then we had web services that were in .NET 5 also, or 4 at that time. It was too long ago. So we did that, and we tried to change and refactor as much as we could, and then rehost it as a platform as a service or app as a service. And that didn't work either. I mean, it almost worked, but we got some bugs and errors because we found out that that database had a lot of issues, a lot of duplicates. So there were like, it's just like spaghetti. If the code is a spaghetti code, it was also like complex and messy there up there, if you know what I mean. So, so what we did instead is we did try 1 and 2, it didn't work. So, okay, let's do the start from scratch thing. So in parallel of that project that we had, we also have a new project with a new look, new UI, a new .NET version, which is the ASP.NET Core back then, so we're moving away from the old one. And we did the new architecture, new design, a new database, and new like tables in that. And that actually worked. Everything looks good. That's great. But then the project got stopped. And now that we are successful, then it got stopped. And it was stopped not because I'm a bad developer, bad architect, or bad planner, but it was stopped because the client, major client that are using the system, they didn't want to push through with the project because they think they're not ready for cloud. And one of the reasons that they are not ready is that they're concerned about cloud, like in terms of security and the challenges that it has. So unfortunately, the project was stopped, and the code was still sitting in one of our repos back then. So from being a superwoman, I went actually for, to be honest. So I was like burned out, stressed. Like it was like a project for like 8 to 10 months going. So there were like, but I learned a lot. Like it went along, so it was like accelerating and then down, just when we are ready to be successful. But anyway, I went for a 4. And I took a break, not just a fika break, but I took a break. I did actually took a break from that job. I quit that job, and I decided to take a few weeks or a month off, and I traveled to Portugal to do some reflections. So I did some reflections and asked myself, what went wrong there? You know, sometimes when something goes wrong, we question, is it our fault? Is it the project fault? Is it it's the other things, other factors around it? So I was asking myself, if I could teleport and turn back time, what could we or I could have done differently? So instead of the movie Back to the Future, I want to go back from the future. If I could go back to that project again today, I mean, go back there, what could I have done differently? So I came up and realized that in certain scenarios, like cloud migration projects that didn't make through production, I realized that we shouldn't have regrets. We should have lessons learned. And I came up with this top 8 lessons learned based on my experience in that cloud migration journey. So the first lesson is that it is important to plan our business strategy in terms of cloud migration. This is the very, very first step that we need to think about. Like, for example, what are the business requirements? What is it that you really need to do? It's not just about moving to the cloud. It is also about complying or solving problems in the real world that the business users really need. And then the next lesson that are important to consider that I also learned is paying the tech debt now, and don't do it later when you're already in the cloud. So when you have like legacy applications that's about like 10, 15 years, and then you have real users that are using it in production, it's a challenge to just like modernize and move it. And then that you're sitting in the code, you see that there are issues, there are technical depths there. So you really need to have a dedicated team that will solve this technical debt if you want to keep the same system and find solutions that will work for you. So if you see that image, I really like it because if you look at it, you can see that someone is asking why it's taking time for a new window to get installed in that house. A new window could mean a new feature in the system, but you can't install it because the house itself is broken, the foundation is broken. So pay technical debt first before moving to the cloud. And of course, be cloud ready. So I was like this little boy. I was like a visionary. I want to help my company. I want to help this application to be effective. But it was only me. So it's important that before you start your cloud journey, everyone should be in a line and in sync with your mission together. And then remember the 5Fs to success, which is like starting small steps to your successful cloud migration. So sometimes, just like what happened, I just got a command from, not command, but a mission or requirement from my boss that, hey, Jonah, we need to move these applications to the cloud. Like, do it as quick as possible, but it's not like that. So it should have been planned properly, and it should be done in small steps. And of course, be conscious about your data storage and your strategy in moving to the cloud. So for example, we had a lot of data that are sensitive in our database, and we have to make sure and think about the GDPR policy that we have here in Europe. That, for example, if we're going to migrate or modernize our tables or databases and move it to Azure SQL, for example, we have to make sure that we're not putting in or those sensitive information to the cloud, and we're protecting it if we're going to save it there. And make sure that the dev and the ops are in sync. So while we were in the process of our cloud migration, so we have, I was one of the developers / architect who was helping as well. We also have like, what do you call that in Swedish? Kravfångare, and those that are working in the IT ops. And we were planning to do Azure DevOps because we're modernizing and we want to make sure that we have one tool, one place, one platform to do our repositories, our pipelines, and everything. But then the one that set the business requirements, or let's just say IT ops, prefer to use the old style Excel instead in making tests or setting business requirements, putting the tasks in Excel, instead of working together in using DevOps or Jira or modern tools that will help. So it is important that the DevOps team and the IT also, Dev and the Ops are in sync. And 7, seek advice from those that are experts already. So if your company or organization are having challenges with the cloud migration, so get help because there are a lot of help, for example, from many cloud providers, like for example, Azure support those help for you and everyone. And learn from other experiences, like what I'm doing right now. I'm standing in front of stage, in front of you. If I didn't have that experience of failed migration, maybe it wouldn't be a lessons learned talk today. And because not all projects are perfect. So yeah, and if ever you fail in your project, don't be afraid to just try again, because a cloud journey is like a trial and error, because some of us are in different levels, and the most important thing is that we focus on the goal of moving to the cloud, if that's your goal or mission, and just try try again if you fail. And last but not the least is also security is a good thing to think about and understand really what it means when you're moving your applications to the cloud. For example, the shared responsibility model. There are a good diagram in Microsoft Docs that explains who is responsible in data, the applications when you're, depending on the cloud deployment models that you're trying to implement in your projects. And of course, those are just the top 8 lessons that I come up, but it can be different project per project. And it's about finding or choosing the right and wrong. And it's important to succeed slowly than failing fast, just like what happened in my project a long time ago. And never make the same wrong moves. I myself, I play chess on my free time. And the first time I played chess, I lost. So I was frustrated, of course. But then I didn't let that failure let me stop playing chess. So I just used that wrong move so that next time I play the next party or next game, then I win again. So it's just like also with cloud migration or any project. So learn from others and just learn from mistakes if you have any. And of course, now we're here to the most important guide or tool that you can use, which is the Cloud Adoption Framework, which is useful for those of you that are still planning to migrate to the cloud. So actually, the CUF is the short for that. It is actually a collection of documentation and guides, technical guides, that Microsoft provides to those that are planning to move to the cloud. And it has different stages. For example, inside the circle, you see the plan. First is define the strategy, the plan, and then you're gonna adopt and be ready, and then the govern and the manage in the entire flow. And of course, there are 2 types of migrations triggers. So there's the innovation triggers and then the migration triggers. So it really depends. So sometimes you want to move to the cloud because you want to migrate and modernize, like innovate. You want to improve your experiences for your customers, engagement, and you want to also reduce complexity. The cloud offers a lot of things that could help us save costs. For example, if you're in the cloud, you don't have to think about infrastructure. So there are a lot of things, like for example, this morning I checked on Jacob's session about development as a code, and that was something that I didn't have opportunity last 6-8 years ago. So yeah. And this is how it looks, the Cloud Adoption Framework. So first, you need to define your strategy, which means that you need to understand your motivations, your business justification, and then you have to choose a project that you want to prioritize. So it can be like you have a big system, so sometimes you can't just move something big up there to the cloud. So you need to have a prioritized project, and then you plan, you get ready. That means that you're gonna have your first landing zone, you do the setup, and then adopt has 2 versions or 2 types, the migrate and innovate, just like the previous picture that I showed you. And based on that, you can follow the different guide and migration scenarios, best practices, and improvements that you can have. And then, aside from planning, adapting, there's also governance and manage that is important through the entire process. And then before you can move to the cloud, there's also a tool called the cost management. So sometimes you want to know if it's too expensive to move to the cloud or not. And Azure provides different tools like for example, Azure Pricing Calculator. If you're an architect or a developer just trying to do hands-on and learn about how much would it cost you to use this service, then there is the tool Azure Pricing Calculator that you can use beforehand, even if you don't have the subscription yet. And then there's also the Azure Cost Management, the Total Cost of Ownership Calculator. And that calculator is useful if you're trying to calculate how much money you would save if you're gonna move from on-premise to the cloud. So it's gonna give you a graph or a good data and table how much you would save in 5 years or 10 years if you're gonna move from on-premise to Azure or cloud. And then when you're already in the cloud, you can actually control your costs by using budget alerts. You don't want to extend that. Okay, and when it comes to like moving, there's actually this term called, you can also Google it or check it on this link. There's this 5 R's of rationalization of digital estate. So it's like the rehost, refactor, re-architect, rebuild, and new, and then replace. And those are the things that I went through actually in my project, all of them. And you can read more about it on the link here. So Azure Migrate Tools is also a good tool to know. So what it does is that it gives you a centralized hub to give you, like, if you want to migrate, for example, your database servers or servers that are on-premise, it's going to give you the tools that you need for that. Like, I can show you a bit of demo here. And then it also gives you the option to have a data box. So if you have something in your on-premise that are too big, you can actually order a data box from Azure so that it can help you migrate to the cloud if it's too big. And then there's also Microsoft Assessments, which has different tools or assessments. For example, what is useful is Cloud Adoption Strategy Evaluator, and then Cloud Journey Tracker, and other tools here. Let me just see. So when I was testing this evaluator, what I did is that that was like just this year. So the project was like about years ago. So I went through all the checklists myself and tried to evaluate how much score my company would have if we use this evaluator. Let me see. I lost the. Okay. If I use this evaluator, it's not moving. Wait, let's see. Okay. So yeah. So what I did is that I tried to did a checklist on all the questions that I had in that evaluator, and this was the result that I got from that project that I shared to you earlier. So as you can see, we had a low score, which is super red there, and we have a result of 1/10. So I wish that we had this tool earlier, earlier at that project. And this tool will actually help you and your organization in which things that you can do, like recommendations in terms of moving to the cloud. So let me just share a bit about Microsoft assessments. Let me see. I have this here. Let's see. Oh, it's not showing. Okay. I supposed to show something? That you see my dog? Okay, I think I'll skip the demo for now. I don't want to switch screens. Okay, I'll do that. I'll just skip it. So what I was trying to show you is that how Azure Migrate works in Azure, and also the different Microsoft assessments. But actually, this is actually the screenshot that I shared with you, in which you see that you have questions like how are you identifying your motivations and documentation and other things. So based on what you filled in that, which can be different depending on your goal, it will show you your score. You can export it, and then it will give you recommendations and what you could do better before you can to make a successful cloud journey. So I'll skip the demo because I'm having problems with the switching screen and the time maybe is not enough. And the next tool that I want to share with you is the Azure Well-Architected Framework. Have any of you tried using that? You? Yes? What do you think of it? Well, yes, that's right. So, yeah, thank you. So, the well-architectured framework is also good to know because, if, for example, if you're an architect that's helping a cloud migration project in any organization, or your client, if you're a consultant, it will give you this guide in terms of what to think about when you're architecting like any solutions to the cloud, because it will help you guide in terms of reliability, cost optimization, operational excellence, performance, and security. And this is useful if you're in the process of planning that. So if you want to learn about, so earlier I showed CUF. Now I'm showing about WAF. So they have like two short, Microsoft has two short names for this. So Cloud Adoption Framework, CUF, and then WAF for the Well-Architected Framework, which both of them actually are very good tools to have or use when you're migrating. And of course, it's not just moving everything, the on-premise to the cloud. There's also the option of hybrid. So today, like with all the cloud platforms available today, like we have Azure, we have AWS, so we also have the option to do hybrid, because some of the clients that we have or business cases that we have, sometimes we don't have to put everything in the cloud. Sometimes we have to keep them on-premise for security purposes, like banks or government institutions. I know here in Sweden that our government institutions are very sensitive in terms of moving sensitive data out to the cloud. So you have the option as well, the Azure hybrid options or tools allows you to like migrate to the cloud with multi-cloud options and edge solutions as well. And if you're having a very huge challenge, don't know where to start, Microsoft actually has this guide or help, like for example, fast track for Azure. So if your company is like a partner, you have the option to do a fast track, which means that you get a direct access to the support of Microsoft engineers when you're in the process of migration. And then there's the program for Azure Migration Modernization Program, and also the Azure MSP. I think we have a few and some here in Microsoft Sweden. And if you're designing something, you're architect, or if you're a developer doing the development / architecting as well, you have that like decision, you're a decision maker in what you want to build. It's also good. I want to share this with you because I'm a developer at the same time, also think about good and the, what do you call it, sustainable applications. And I want to share this top 10 design principles for Azure applications, because it's also good to think as a developer that when you're coding, it's not just about building new features, but it's also building something that's sustainable. Like for example, Number one, I like that because it says designed for self-healing. So when we build something in our applications, we should design it with that it heals itself. Like you don't have to, it should be like bug-free or like it handles itself. And designed for evolution, is the system or applications that you're building, is it going to last after 10 years, after 15 years? Or another developers need to fix them for us after a year. So yeah, I'm just sharing this. This is a good stuff. All right. If you want to learn more about CUF, there's a lot of good documentations about it. And Microsoft also has an ebook that they provide for free. It is about migration and modernizing to Azure. So you can scan the QR code. And then if you prefer containers, if you need to do that, there's also a guide for that. And finally, I actually, because of the fiasco, I call it fiasco, in a way, even if I succeeded in building the migration, I actually started writing my first technical book because of my experience in that cloud migration project. So I want to write something that will help others or IT pros that are still beginning to learn more about cloud. So I want them to understand it better so that it will help solve some problems. So that's I'm currently working on my book and it's still halfway, so hopefully I can finish it up. And yeah. So don't rush up, flying up to the cloud, and always be prepared for that. Because if you fail to prepare, you're actually preparing yourself or your organization to fail as well. So thank you so much for your time listening to my cloud migration story. I hope that you've gained something. If you have questions or feedback, you can contact me or talk to me on the hallway. Feel free to just reach out. Yes. So thank you so much. Yes. I think I'm on time. Did I finish my session too early? Just a little bit, maybe because I didn't want to bore everyone. Thank you, everyone. So maybe I can ask questions if there's anybody. How many minutes I have? Huh? 30 more. Okay. Oh my God. I shortened the session. Oh, wait. Maybe others have time. Do you have this? I can take questions instead. Does any of you have questions? No? There's a question. Do we have a mic? No mic. Mic. Yeah. If I would, yeah. Yes, I think I would do all the things that I mentioned. Just kidding. I think I would start by educating and preparing my team or the organization about the importance and value of modernizing to the cloud. And the next step would be to know if we're going to do containers, microservice, and what we're trying to solve. Yeah. Yes. More questions? I didn't expect this will be too early. Maybe I didn't pause too much. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your time.